Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Let us start this lecture 5 with a thought process from Gautam Buddha. According to him, as irrigators lead water where they want, as archers make their arrows straight, as carpenters carve wood, the wise people save their minds. If you look at this statement, is about basically how to save the mind, but in this he has talked about the irrigators who will be irrigating the land with water for cultivation purposes, and of course other things are there. And if you look at, water is a very important part of life, rather what is being considered as water is the elixir of life. So, we need to look at what are the technologies being used in ancient India for harvesting water and also conserving it. So, as I told, the water is very important and it is really very commodity which is essential for any living organism to survive on this beautiful earth. If you look at these pictures here, which I have shown here, it looks quite beautiful, and that is our beloved earth. So, if you look at, it is also considered as a blue planet, and it looks quite beautiful and attractive from the outside, from the space, as this picture has been taken from the space, and that is our Mother Earth. It looks beautiful because of water. Had that water not been there, I think that it could have not really so beautiful. So, as we know that our earth contains 70% of its area as water, so also our human body and also the other living organism which will be having the 70% of water and rest are other materials. So, what a coincidence. And having said that, our earth, our Mother Earth is having large amount of water, but when we look at it, that how much water really we can utilize, you will be surprised to know that it is quite less. Let us look at the data which I have taken from this World Freshwater Resources in the book, like in Peter H. Glerick, and of course this chapter is basically by the Ignore Cyclomanov. And total water, if you look at total global water, 96.5% of global water are basically in ocean, and which will be saline. And of course, apart from that, another 1% water in lakes and other regions which will be there also saline. That means the fresh water we can think of using is 2.5% only. And out of this 2.5%, the water which is being there in the glaciers and ice cap, around something 68.6%. That means out of this 2.5%, take the 68.6 of that 2.5% water, then you cannot use, and 30.1% of this fresh water is basically in the ground. Of course, we are using now with the help of mechanical pump systems, and what is available is the surface, and other fresh water is 1.3, out of this surface or the fresh water are also 73.1 are there in the form of ice and snow, which one cannot really use directly, and 20.1% of this fresh water is basically lying in lakes, and there will be some 3.5% in the soil moisture, and 2.5% are swamps and marshes, which rarely can be used, and river is 0.46%, and living things is 0.22%. Of course, atmosphere will be 0.22%. So if you look at that water available river and maybe in some lakes is very less, and with that we will have to manage and so that living of can sustain with the accelerated development spree being carried out by our leaders across the globe. I mean industrialization, blatant industrialization, what is going on, and in the process we are spoiling the water as well. So generally, if you look at in modern parlance, like people consider to be developed only when they use large amount of water, so also energy. So if you look at US is considered to be the developed country, and per person per day water utilization is around something maybe 575 liters. Of course, the other like undeveloped countries like Uganda and Haiti and some other countries are very less amount of water, and India comes in between. It is basically developing countries. So if you look at we consumed around 135 liters per person, right, out of which the majority of them for washing utensils and flushing of urinals, and then latrines. Bathing is 20 liters. Of course, cooking and drinking we use very less amount. For cooking we use around 4 liters, and drinking we use 3 liters of water, which is not adequate, at least in the summer season, maybe in winter season. So, and for gardening we use 23 liters. Keep in mind that this is for the domestic uses, but there will be industrial uses. There will be also agricultural purposes we use water. And this data is basically quite old. It's something 12 years old. This is a report from UNDP Human Development. Now it might have gone up, because as we are developing, then we will have to use more amount of water, and that is a symbol, basically a marker rather, that whether you are developed or underdeveloped or developing country. It is a really very pathetic situation that more you use energy and more you use water and other resources, you are considered to be developed. In principle, it could have been other way around. The least you should use, that means you are more developed. But unfortunately, across the globe, that is the criteria being propagated vehemently by intellectuals and leaders and then other people, and which is unfortunate, but it should be other way around. And if you look at the technology wise, we will have to devise in such a way that we should not use, we will minimize rather the amount of water to be utilized per person. And let us look at like what are the problems we are going to face, and what we are marching on a path of unsustainable growth. Growth is essential, or growth is the part and parcel of life, so also development. But the development or the growth must be sustainable, must be eco-friendly, must be integrated with the mother nature, right, for sustaining of life forms on this beautiful earth. So what UN, the Water for Life, this is being taken, this data, and it says that around 700 million people in 43 countries suffer today from water scarcity. This may be little, maybe around 5 to 10 years back data. and by 2025, 108 billion people will be living in the countries or region with absolute water scarcity, and 2/3 of world population could be living under water stress condition. That is their prediction, and I think it is, we are also marching towards 2025. It is not far away, because today is 2018. And with existing climate change scenario, there is a change in climate that across the globe, and which is quite alarming, and almost half of the world population will be living in areas of high water stress by 2030. That is the what their scenario they are predicting, including between 75 million to 250 million people in Africa. In addition to that, water scarcity in some arid, semi-arid places will displace between 24 million to 700 million people, will be also there. That means larger populations will be affected by this water stress, such that it will be difficult for them to sustain the life. And Sub-Sahara Africa has the largest number of water stress countries of any region. Of course, they are suffering now, and it is not only the water starvation or water stress condition, but also the quality of water is going down day by day, particularly in developing and developed countries, because of blatant industrialization and abusing of the water resources in the name of development. So, this is the scenario what I have given. Let me just give you pictures, which is taken, the data is from International Water Management Institute, and if you look at the various color combination are given here. For example, this blue and this color, light gray colors, like little or no water scarcity, and of course some of them not estimated. If these colors are there, these are not estimated. And if you look at red color, physical water scarcity, and that is yellow color, economy water scarcity, which is of course there is a part of in India and other places, and there is a this color, like which is there also middle part of India, central India, and red part is physical, is there in the southern part of our country. And of course, there is a Nagaland, Odisha, some portion, other places. There is a little better problems, even some coastal area may be having, particularly the western coastal areas will be having less problem of water. But if you look at India is facing a bigger problem and of water scarcity in for years to come. And we are facing similar problem. We will see what are the water crisis in India as of today. And I have just shown the map here of our country, and if you can see this yellow color, which is different colors, yellow white is color, those are the state like which are affected. Most affected is Rajasthan. This is from time immemorial also, because that is a arid region, and Gujarat, Maharashtra, like your Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, these are the places water is a really big problem. And I remember I was there in Bangalore 25 years back for my doctoral studies. I had experienced the water crisis there at that time in Bangalore city. And if you look at that is not the problem with your New Delhi, it is not only the problem with in the Bangalore or the southern part of our country, but also the our capital, that is New Delhi. If you look at this NDMC, New Delhi Municipality Corporation, it is a Peyajal, that means water for drinking water. You can see that how people are really struggling to get water, and then they are just hanging on this water tank to that. And it is not that in the city, even in rural areas, like if you look at most of the rural areas, they will have to walk kilometers to get water. particularly in the Gujarat and some arid regions. And the women who are the basically backbone of the family, and they really struggle hard to get water, and in particularly in arid regions and other places. And this well, if you look at, is being basically taken from this Natwargar in Gujarat, which is a large well, and people are surrounded around this well because to get water. Look at the plight of the people for getting water, and a really pathetic situation. If you look at water supply by these cities, municipalities and other corporations, is quite really not good. And if you look at, no city has a continuous water supply for 24 hours, which is considered to be the sign of development and other thing. So if you look at here, I have plotted your average number of hours per day, and these are the various cities. Rajkot is having least amount of hours, maybe something around half an hour. What is the data source? And I don't know today, this may be something 10 years old data. And Kolkata is having something around little more than 8 hours, and also like Vijayawada, Surat, other thing is less than 4 hours. If you look at these places are less than 4 hours. So situation is also quite grim in the major cities, and that we need to look at how to manage with the burgeoning population, because the main causes of this water crisis in the present India is because of increasing of population and rising demands, right, for also have a good life, and industrialization is one of them, and that's why people are using it lavishly, water. And I know that at least young generation, particularly even older generation to large extent, even middle, are not really concerned about water conservation. They feel that is they can have a money and they can buy the water. And even I had some kind of a discussion with the people in in educational institutes, and they feel that I am paying for it. I told, paying doesn't mean that you will have a right on the water. So you'll have to, one has to use sparingly and conserve the water. So over extraction of easily available water surface and groundwater resources with the help of modern technologies. Earlier days, if you want to get some water, you'll have to use your physical, you'll have to work for, or you'll have to lift the water physically. That means you'll have to, the body will be act, and you cannot do. Today you just press a button and then water will be just coming in the submerged pump, and then you'll do that. That's why the people misuse it. And another reason also is that for agriculture uses, people use too much of water, which is not really required. But as in some parts of our country, the farmers are not being charged, they misuse it for extravaganza in using the water. Increasing human impact on the environment and contamination of available water resources, that is another problem. Because if you look at, people are scared of water contamination, and people started using bottled water, and those people who are rich. And that is also another problem of spoiling the water, because when they purify the water, they waste a lot of water in the process. The changing the climate and global warming is another cause which needs really demands more water utilization for sustaining the life on this earth. And excessive environmental degradation in catchment area, this is another reason. And catchment area is also encroached by the people, so that enough water is not being collected during the rainy seasons and other times. So that is another big problem in our country. Pollution of river, surface and groundwater is another topic which I had discussed little bit in when we are talked about environmental consciousness. And it's a big challenge for to have a development, so called this modern physical development or materialistic development. At the same time, we will have to not pollute water in the river, surface and ground. That is a challenge, and what one has to look at it. And gross mismanagement of land and water resources like droughts, floods and landslides is also a great challenge. And blind following of unsustainable materialistic Western life styles in the name of modernity and development, these are the main causes basically what crisis we are having, and population is the outcome of that also. So therefore, we need to look at what are the way our ancient people were managing the water such that it was sustainable, and they were harvesting, how they were conscious about utilization of water sparingly. So that was the things what we will be looking at it. Let me quote from this Chandogya Upanishad. Is a very beautiful statement. What it says is the water which pervades everything, big or small, the earth, the atmosphere, the heaven, the mountains, gods, men, animals, birds, grass, plants, dogs, worms, insects, ants, all these are water indeed. If you look at what a great statement it was having, at that time people could conceive it. They were not having that, it is very much complied with the modern science, what we have studied and what we feel also. It's a very profound statement. And if you look at Samaveda, this Purvachik, and you will see that there is been described one type of water goes up, another type of water comes down, rainwater flows into rivers, and Yajurveda talks about process of water movement from clouds to earth, flow through the channels, storage in oceans, evaporations and infiltration. I have just really talked about certain terminology what are there. If you construct it around, and then you will find this is nothing but a components of hydrological cycle. That means they were aware of how the hydrological cycle or water cycle was working. If you look at, we might have studied, this is being covered in the schools. Therefore, I mean, if you look at this water cycle, it's very beautiful that the ocean, it will be evaporated, it will go as a rain cloud, and then it will be condensed on the mountains and then some groups areas, such that water again will be flows through these mountains, and then it will come to the rivers, and then it will be taking care of water needs of the people around. Again it will come back with the runoff to this water. Besides this, they will be infiltrated into the ground, and then it will also connected to the subsurface outflow waters. So if you look at in the name of development, so what we are doing, we are basically spoiling or destroying the mountains. I have seen the Eastern Ghats, particularly some of Eastern Ghats and then some portion of Western Ghats are disseminated. Just they have removed the mountain, taken away the mountain, not removed I can say, right, for the making these concrete jungles. And those are the points which control the raining and then patterns, and it helps, is a part of this water cycle. And we have also spoiled the various areas both in quality and quantity of water so far in the river is concerned, and also the other adjacent land masses. So we are basically interfering the activities with which Mother Nature works, so that she maintains the water cycle. And let us look at the bird's eye view of water harvesting system. It is quite old, and if you go back to 3000 BC, the dam was built of stone dribbles in Balochistan and Kutch region of Gujarat, and 3500 to 1300 BC Indus Valley civilization had several reservoirs to collect rainwater runoff. Each house had an individual well, and if you look at what I am trying to give you, very succinct account of the certain chronology, just to have a feel that water harvesting system is not really a new concept. It is as old our civilization. So 321 to 291 BC, you can find several archaeological evidences for dams, lakes, irrigation system during Mauryan's period. In 3rd century BC, Kautilya Arthashastra has mentioned irrigation system using water harvesting system, and even he has talked about like to tax for water being used for irrigation purposes. And 1st century BC, Sriranga Verapura near Allahabad had a sophisticated water harvest system using flood waters of Ganges. And 2nd century AD, Grand Anicut or the Kalanai built by Karikala Cholas across the river Kaveri to divert water for irrigation, which is still functional, which is still being used today. And 11th century AD, if you look at King Bhoja, Bhopal built the largest artificial lake, which is around 65,000 acres in India, fed by streams and springs. It was naturally made, and of course the 12th century AD, Raja Tarangini, a text written by in Sanskrit by Kalana, described a well-maintained irrigation system even in Kashmir at that time, or maybe much before that. So, if you look at the historical perspective of the well and water bodies, it is quite a bit. I will just trying to give you a very brief account of it. If you look at our Indus Valley civilization, in Mohenjo-daro, people found large number of wells within the housing complex, and which really indicates the importance of well water for domestic and ritualistic purpose. Even today, we always prefer waters from the well for ritual purposes, because we feel that it is pious in nature. And that tradition is still going on, although people are going for now piped water. And besides this, the occurrence of word avat, well, repeatedly used in Rig Vedas, and which indicates that the Vedic people were knowing how to dig a well and also maintain it. During Mauryan rule, farmer used to pay tax, as I told earlier, for using well and fitted with machine. That means there was a way of lifting the water from the well to the farmer's land. Panini's Asade mentions two types of wells, like Karakandu and Sakandu. One is permanent well dug at the right side of river, that is Karakandu, and Sakandu is a temporary one which is on the left side of water, because the fact that the rivers were allowed to inundate the lands annually. It's a very good technique was being used, so that the water will inundate the land, so that the silts will be there, it will be used as a fertilizer for the land for irrigation purposes. But today we do not use that. That is a very important aspect once we see. In the early Tamil anthologies, which is basically collection of poems of like Mani Meghali, Tirukul and Patinapalis and others, terms related to water wells are being mentioned, namely Kuval, Kulam, Kinaru, Vani, Keni, etc. are being used. I think people from south can pardon me, because my pronunciation may not be of that quality what is called for. And Dharmasastras mention 4 types of man-made water receivers, namely Kupa, Vapi, Pushkarini and Tadaga. That means these are the water bodies which are being utilized earlier in our scriptures. If you look at the Kupa, is basically is a small well which varies from 5 to 50 cubit. 1 cubit is around 45 centimeter diameter or a width. It is generally having no flight steps to reach water. You can see even in some villages today, but very rarely in cities now. And Vapi is a step well. It is large well with steps of 4, 3 or 2 sides to reach water levels, and its size varies from 40 to 100 cubics, and its shape can be square, rectangular, circular. It is built to a depth of 10 cubits below the spring as per the Vishwakarma Vastu Shastra. And according to Matsya Purana, the Bhapya, the step well, is equal to 10 kupas in merit, because people were feeling or getting also blessings from God when you really dig or a well, so that people will utilize. That was considered as a pious thing at the time, and bathing gats are provided with it, generally with the bhapis. Only one side water lifting machine can be placed, other sides can be utilized by people. Pushkarini, basically pond, whose size varies from 100 to 200 cubic feet in diameter or length. Tadaga is a big water tank, its size varies from 200 to 1000 cubits in diameter length. And if you look at, there are several wells were discovered in Mohenjo-daro, which are finest example point of structural details, which we will be discussing. Of course, each house were having well, what being mentioned in the some of the literature by the archaeologists and the historians. The shape of the well in the Mohenjo-daro and Harappan sites are generally circular in nature. Let us look at a typical Harappan circular well. If you look at, this is having a well here, and which was built with the trapezoidal bricks, and to prevent inward collapse, so that it won't really get into that thing. And the diameter of the well is around 3 to 4 feet, and of course there is a very interesting thing that this is made of wedge shaped bricks, are molded and burnt. These are burnt bricks what they were using at that time. The wider bricks are carefully curved to have a smooth surface, and mud mortar is used to bind the bricks. And the pavements of brick laid out around the well were sloped towards the drain at one corner, because this is a drain, this is your drain, and generally top of the well are well projected such that the wastewater won't enter into the well. So this is a very beautiful system what they were having at that time. And this is the layout of Dholavira, which is a very famous site in the located at Khadirbet in Kutch district in the state of Gujarat. If you look at, this is your castle area, this is your valley, and this is basically considered citadel. If you look at this, F is the reservoirs, and this is the rivulets which is passing through that. There is also another rivulet, Manasar channel, and there is a dam which is being built at the time, and from this the water can go and recharge these reservoirs, so also these areas, and such that they can be utilized whenever it is required. So Dholavira had a unique sophisticated water conservation system of channels, reservoir built completely of stone, which is of one of the earliest, rather is the earliest found in anywhere in the world as claimed by the people. And this I have shown a reservoir here, and which is having a step well. That means the reservoir was having a which is quite huge. So this is Dholavira Eastern Reservoirs, which area is around 21,170 meter cube, and it was having a stayed well at the bottom. This I have shown here, so that it can be, water can go and recharge the ground also. So if you look at this rock cut southern water reservoir is having something 33 into 9 meters square, like with a secondary reservoir at the bottom. There are two reservoirs, the one is the top and the bottom one, and which is a smaller one. This is a very unique techniques were used at that time, and you can see also we do use earlier days in the when we are developing the ponds. There will be steps wise, so that water can be remain even in the summer seasons. The archaeologists could found 3 massive reservoirs which are used for storing fresh water brought by the rains, or store water diverted from 2 nearby rivulets as I had mentioned earlier. This clearly came in response to the desert climate and condition of Kutch, where several years may pass without rainfall. That means if you look at, they were having knowledge of how to go about it, and several dams were built to collect water and use it so that they will not face problem during the water starvation period. So, not only that, these channels or these reservoirs were being connected through the small or even huge underground drains, so that in one of them will be connected to other. If surplus water is there, it can go. So, and this is the channel which I have shown here, and this is also made of stone. So, that is being well built and designed. And let us look at the terracotta rings were used, particularly in Punjab, Rupnagar of Punjab region, where dominant practice in the first millennium BC. These are terracotta, where the water can be taken from the well. I mean, it is a part of the well, and that tradition continues even till the Pallava period, which were something 570 AD to 900 C. And terracotta ring are being used in Mahamalapuram. Besides these earthen pipes and tunnels, maybe baked one thing used to connect basically the water in the underground and also transport the water to distant places, and people have found evidence in the various locations like Baranpur in MP, Golconda in AP, and Bijapur in Karnataka, and Aurangabad in Maharashtra, and other places also will be having. That means the technology was there, which is really very much sustainable, unlike the modern one. And I will be discussing about a Rani Ki Vav, an 11th century step well in Gujarat, which has been approved as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, which is described as an exceptional example of technological development in utilizing the groundwater resources. And this really is very interesting and also quite epoch making. And unfortunately, it was buried under several layers of silt for almost 7 centuries, and due to the flood in Saraswati rivers. And the structure looks like that. If you look at, there are several steps, and this is your well, and these are the adjacent area where people might be living. I will be talking about that these are the places. And this is the Rani Ki Bhav, and it was built in the complex Maru Gujra architectural style with an inverted temple, and 7 levels of staircases are there, which holds around 500 principal sculptures of high artistic quality. I will show you how good those art there, and these are the steps which are there, so that you can really go there. And this is around something 3,500 narrow steps in 13 levels, and this magnificent structure measures approximately 64 meter long and 20 meter wide and 27 meter deep. So, I will be also discussing about this from the perspective of how to maintain the temperature during the summer because of these water bodies, when we will be discussing about it in some other lectures. Its unique feature is a stepped corridor, compartmented at regular intervals, pillared, multi-storied pavilions are there. So, this well is located at the westernmost and end of the structure, consisting of 10 meter diameter and 30 meter deep, and evidence suggests that wall had built of bricks and faced with the stone. Whatever you see, it is basically faced with stone. This is known as the cladding basically in modern terminology. And from this wall project, vertical brackets in pair, and which was supported the different galleries of well shaft properly, and the bracketing is arranged in tiers, is richly carved. If you look at, these are the carving position. Let me show you a magnified view of that. It is having images of goddess and goddesses, so intricate, they had built. It is not just a well what they had built, it is a monument which is remains to be really, it is very much appreciated by all over the world. And Rani Ki Bhav can be said as a queen among the step wells of India. Look at what are the artistic expression being displayed on this monument. A small gate below the last step of the step wells was located, leading to the tunnel of 30 kilometers there was a tunnel which people have also found out, which leads to a town of Sidhpur near Patna. It was believed that the king which might be there during the war or something, he can go around 30 kilometers. How they build those tunnels is also another mind-boggling question which might be coming to your mind. Established a distinct form of subterranean water resources and storage system on the Indian subcontinents have been constructed since Harappan times. It is not a new techniques, but it is still legacy was there, but unfortunately today we lost this technology and also the legacy due to these modern developments. So, this temple of water tanks, which is a very important component, because temple was a center for mass learning, and it was a center with which the culture and heritage being propagated, being continued and then maintained. So, therefore, temple plays a very important role. It is not just a worship place, but it is a part and parcel of Indian life, and which is being neglected nowadays. Water from temple tanks was not extracted for everyday chores, and thus served the vital purpose of recharging underground aquifers, reducing runoff, enhancing the water stagnation time, thus ensuring sufficient water in the domestic well during the summer months. So, each temple was having a several water bodies. Let me just give one example. Narendra Reservoir of the Jagannath temple in Puri of Odisha. This is the Puri temple, what you can see here. Narendra Reservoir is located something on the northern side of the Sri Jagannath temple, which is about 1 kilometer from the temple, and its size is something 873 feet long and 743 feet wide. It is quite a huge reservoir, and it was created during 13th century by Narendra Mahapatra, the minister of Kavi Narasimha Deva in at that time. And this is the Narendra Sarovar, which I have shown. If you look at the center, there is a place, and there I believe it is being considered, and this is the breeze what they had made for that. Even at that time, breeze are being made. If you look at, it's a very beautiful structures. And at the center they are having, because some people believe it might be a step wells to conserve the water during even worst summer. And not only this Narendra Reservoir, there is another tank, Indraduna tank, is located near Gundija temple, which is around 3 kilometers from the main temple. Rohini Kunda is a sacred well located with Jagannath temple premises itself, and Markandeya temple is around 4 acres in size, with the Markandeswara temple is quite a huge temple which is located southwest of Jagannath Mandir in Markandeya Sai area, and Sweta Ganga tank is located to the south of temple. That means if you look at, as of now, today even these water bodies are existing, 5 water bodies which are related to the temple. Forget about other water bodies which might be there around that. So, therefore, the temple was a very important, and then they take care of all the consideration. If you look at, this is a map where people have located the temple. Of course, it is not a complete data, because if you look at the number of temples what they have reported here, 175 temple tanks in the southern part of the country, and this is not complete according to me. Total Tamil Nadu was having 39 temple tanks with the area of something 0.25 to 3 hectares. 1 hectare is 10,000 meters square, such a huge. So, and there is also smaller one. Temple tanks were revered no less than the temple itself, and it was considered to be sacred, and it was also being maintained well, but today it is not so. Some of the sacred tanks supported variety of life forms which help to maintain the cleanliness of the tank in natural way, and there are several plants are being implanted around the tanks so that the quality of water are being maintained. And most of the ancient temple tanks have fallen in the state of repair and disuse, because nobody is taking care of it. And not only that, unchecked extraction has led to the drying of some of the temple tanks, it is very unfortunate. Pressure on the land have led to the encroachment of these dried out tanks, because people have taken over the tanks. They don't have now fear for the God, and that has gone with the this modernity. And many tanks have become sinks for the sewage and the garbage of the neighborhood. So that even temple tanks are being spoiled. Forget about other tanks which are for public use, are being taken over by the people, or they are on the dilapidated condition today. And even it is very difficult to look at those things today. It is about the water bodies what I have discussed. In the next lecture, I will be discussing about irrigation system, what people were having, and let us look at water quality, because quality is a big problem. At that time also there was a lot of things, but this is not very exhaustive studies I have done. But however, I will be now trying to give you very bird's eye view of that. And Atharvaveda and Charaka Samhita, Susruta Samhita, Brihat Samhita and other scriptures have talked about to some extent in a very cryptic way. And Brihat Samhita by Baramir has talked about purification of groundwater in the dug wells, right? And he has mentioned some procedure, one has to look at it. He suggested an infuse be made from the mixture of powder herbs, namely Anjan, Bhadramuksha, Khas, the basically vetiver, Amla and Nirmali. These are all Ayurvedic plants are being used for Ayurveda in the water, which is in a major quantities, was to be added water in the wells for purification if something has gone wrong. Whether it is right or wrong, that has to be tested. Unfortunately, question arises, who will do and where are those wells now? And Susruta disclosed that muddy water could be purified with herbs and naturally occurring substances, the nirmali seeds, roots of kamal, like lotus water lilies. I think that is the reason why earlier days the ponds were having the lotus or the lilies were being planted, maybe for purification of water. And rhizomes of algae and 3 stones like gomed, moti and spatik were used or can be used as per the Susruta is concerned. Now more research is required whether these are all right or wrong, and whether this can work today. That is important, because there is a lot of changes has occurred and lot of unnatural way of spoiling the water has really been occurring at a faster rate. He recommended the disinfection of contaminated water by exposing it to the sun or by immersing a red hot iron or hot sand in it. This, of course, I remember when I was a kid, like some hot sand were being put into these wells where they want to remove the foul smells of the water which was coming because of the contamination. And beside this, there are several other things which are being talked about, like tree plantation around the water bodies. I remember that most of the tanks which I had seen during my childhood in the villages were having the lot of varieties of trees around the ponds, but today it is not there. And protection of mountains is also being talked about, forest conservation and adequate pastures where being is required for the water conservation and also the water maintaining water quality. And soil color was considered as an indicator of water quality, but I do not know how it is not being elaborately mentioned in some places. And the ancient Indian custom of storing water in the brass vessels for good health has now been proved scientifically by research, and some people are claiming, but however I did not get any scientific paper as such, but I talked with some people. People do say that that some of the microbiologists affirm that water stored in brass and copper container can help combat many waterborne diseases and should be used in developing countries rather than the cheaper counterparts like plastic containers. But one has to do more research to really find it out what are the best thing to be done, and then some scientific data has to be created to at least make people believe that is right. And scientific principle involved in this is fact that any metal or alloy tends to disrupt the biological systems, but question arises, why copper, why not other metals? So that was the one has to look at, because copper or the brass is being used as a part of our rituals for storing water. And the elements, as I told, like the elements act by interfering with the membranes, enzymes of the cells. For bacteria, this can mean death. So pots are made of brass, or basically brass is a alloy of copper and zinc, or copper shed copper particles into water that they contain, but the minuscule amount of copper particle that circulates into the water while destroying the bacteria cannot really harm human beings. That is also another question, is whether it will harm human beings, because you are just having some metal powders or metal particles are mixed with the water. And beside this, a lot of living organisms like tortoises and frogs, toads are being or water creatures which really may be trying to purify the water by taking, because all this nature is cyclic in nature, therefore it has to be looked at that from that point of view. And proper experiments had to be conducted to prove that whether they can improve the quality of water and how it is. For that more research is required, and if it can be done, then it can be revived what is being talked about in our scriptures and also as per our tradition is concerned. So as I mentioned, that this has to be really verified by modern scientific methods before being implemented, but for that we need to do research. And another thing I must want to talk about, how to locate the water where it is before really digging a well or this thing. Earlier days there was a method which is a little bit controversial, that is known as water divining or dowsing techniques, and even still it is being used, and it is a traditional technique of or traditional practice of using a fork or a sticked rod or a pendulum, coconut extract to locate underground water. In modern time it is quite controversial, maybe something 100 years back it was considered to be very great. Water dowsing has been discussed in Dakar Gala in Barahamir's Brihas Samhita in Krishi Parasar scripture. And as I told, that a person who is having a feel for that, he is using some kind of a fog stick kind of things to locate where water is having, and there is a lot of ritual involved in that one has to look at. And another person is using a coconut to really locate where the water underground water will be there, so that are at a small length as a lesser length, so that one can dig a well or a pump, or one can really find out groundwater. So beside this, people do use astrological method to locate the groundwater in some part of our country, but it is quite also controversial. So water can be located by proximity of certain trees, properties of the soil like smell, color, and other things like ant hills, a frog, a tortoise, or other amphibians can really say that whether water bodies water is there nearby places. So that is another way of locating. All these methods are to be re-looked at it, and are to be in more scientific manner before adopting. And for groundwater exploration, of course, the people do use electrical registry method, and which is having a success rate of around 80%, and of course these methods people do claim something around 60 to 70% kind of success rate. Then why not that and this thing? So one has to can use it. So, let us learn from this, like what can we do for a water crisis from this ancient thing. One should take proper actions to use and conserve the water from the mountains, wells, ponds, rivers and rainwater. Efficient water management strategies and techniques, particularly for conserving, reusing, recycle, can be adopted. Awareness among the people regarding water management and conservation in traditional ways also has to be. Basically, we will have to look at how to use sparingly. Revival of water bodies in rural and urban areas by the people, for the people, of the people, not by government, which will do. Water pricing system, even for groundwater use for agriculture purposes, must be introduced in rural areas. Initiate community concept of living a purposeful life, which is missing in modern India, which was the backbone of our country, and go back to the Indian village culture for living harmoniously with Mother Nature. Nature friendly ancient Indian water technology, access to the good sanitation and drinking water has to be revived. Rainwater harvesting, basically to capture, store rainfall and use it efficiently and sparingly, and harvest each and every drop of rain, catch it where it falls, is the buzzword which we must adopt in our modern life, so that we can overcome or avoid the problem of water crisis. And very much for listening to this talk. Thank you very much.